Very good evening, friends. Meeting again in the session of philosophy, and we are discussing the Stuart Close philosophy, the chapter that is the life, health, and disease. Certain aspects about the life in detail we have discussed. Then we have discussed what is health and how the health is maintained by the vital principle, vital force, and how one remains to be healthy. The concepts in relation with modern science, the Stuart Close tried to explain over there. And after explaining these two concepts, now he is going towards the disease. And that's why we were on page number 66, where he starts with the another aspect of understanding the disease, the nature of disease. So at the same time, he is explaining those old concepts, life, health, and disease in relation with the modern science, telling the details about it so that anyone can understand. And the terminologies we used to use in homeopathy will be useful for the others when it has been explained in relation with the modern science. So let us start with the page number 66, the nature of disease. It has been said of homeopathy that it is not a theory of disease but theory of cure. It is a talking phrase, but like many other such epigrams, it embodies only a half truth, and half truths are always fatal to the right thinking. So see, this sentence itself is a wrong. That is, it is not theory of disease but theory of cure. It's not like that. We have to understand everything. We have to understand the concept of disease, the theory of disease, more important in fact. Because unless we understand the concept of disease, we cannot treat it. The cure never accomplished unless we understand the disease. It can be easily it can easily be proved by reference to the writings of Hahnemann that theory of disease lies at the very foundation of all. The detailed concepts about the disease have been explained by Hahnemann. If you go with the Hahnemann's chronic diseases, if you go with the Organon, everything is mentioned, clearly mentioned by Hahnemann regarding this. This theory, based upon the general philosophical conception of the unity, universality, and supremacy of life and mind, out of which grew Hahnemann's physiodynamical doctrine of life force, was an anticipation by more than 80 years of the biological theory propounded in 1897 by Virchow, the great German pathologist. The modern science follows the concept or theory of chronic diseases or biological theory of diseases, which was propounded by the Virchow in 1897. 80 years before that, Hahnemann explained the same thoughts. The concept of psychosomatic disorders or the dynamical aspect of the understanding of the diseases have been very thoroughly explained earlier by Hahnemann. He has explained the concept of disease in relation with the mind, in relation with the vital force, in relation with the vital principle, and at the same time, its impact upon the body, its impact upon the physical structure. Everything was explained by Hahnemann 80 years before the Virchow. So this is the supremacy of Hahnemann in relation with understanding all the concepts of disease, which modern science have accepted very late. The same concepts are added by the Virchow in his biological theory of disease. Virchow's cellular pathology, in which he summed up his long lifetime of research and study, was until recently the highest medical authority on the subject. Virchow reached the conclusion that pathology is but a branch of biology, that is, that disease is merely life under altered conditions. His conclusion was hailed as the most important achievement of the 19th century, and to the Virchow, in recognition thereof, almost royal honors were granted. So this theory itself gives a lot of things, lot of concepts in relation with the disease, and he was renowned by the because of this concept. His study related with the concept of disease was related with the cells, related with the tissues, related with the understanding of the effect of mind upon the body, upon the physiology. And this concept, which he has mentioned over there, has a lot of significance. So this actually it looks good. In fact, a big entity was explained by him, but it was very early explained by Hahnemann. And what he further says, 84 years before Virchow published his famous dictum, namely in 1813, Hahnemann, in his Spirit of Homoeopathic Doctrine and elsewhere in his writings, use the following expressions to the explanation of the human life, as also its twofold conditions, health and disease. The principles by which we explain other phenomena are quite inapplicable. Again, he says, now, as the condition of the organism and its health state depends solely on the state of life which animates it, in like manner, it follows that the altered state, which we term disease, consists in a condition altered originally only in its vital sensibilities and functions, irrespective of all chemical and mechanical principles. In short, it must consist in an altered dynamical condition, a changed mode of being, whereby the change in the properties of the material component parts of the body is afterward affected, which is a necessary consequence of the morbidly altered conditions of the living world in every individual case. So he has very clearly mentioned about it. He has very clearly explained about this. And what he explained? He has explained that this condition, altered state of the human being, because of any reason. The cause might be dynamical, cause might be physical, cause might be biological, cause might be chemical, anything which affects the dynamic plane, alters the state of health, and is getting converted into the state of disease in the form of signs and symptoms. And this theory was explained by Hahnemann 84 years before Virchow has explained the concept of biological theory of disease. So these thoughts were very clearly explained by Hahnemann earlier. He explained all the causes of diseases. He has explained the causes of diseases in the form of dynamics, in the form of exciting cause. He has mentioned the concept of cause of occasionalis, all things, all causes of diseases very thoroughly explained by Hahnemann over there. Disease will not cease to be spiritual dynamic aberrations of our spirit-like life, manifested by sensation and actions. That is, they will not cease by to be immaterial modifications of our sensorial conditions. That is there. Thus, in terms almost identical with those of his great compatriot, Hahnemann stated the present accepted biological conception of disease, and in so stating, it anticipated by nearly a century one of the profoundest conclusions of modern scientific thought. So Virchow was again a German. He has explained all the concepts which are already Hahnemann have explained nearly about century ago. And those concepts were very thorough, accepted by modern science later, 100 years after Hahnemann. And this is the difference. There are other subjects in which Hahnemann, by marvelous foresight and intuition, anticipated the conclusions of modern science. Among them were the certain of the discoveries of Koch and Pasteur. In 1883, Koch was sent by the German government on a special mission to India to study the Asiatic cholera. He discovered and was able to demonstrate the presence in the intestine of cholera patient of a spiral thread-like bacteria, which readily breaks up into a little curved segments like a comma, each less than 1 by 10,000 of an inch in length. These microscopical living organisms multiply with great rapidity and swarm by millions in the intestines of such patients. Koch showed that they can be cultivated artificially in dilute gelatin broth and obtained in spoonfuls. He also showed that cholera could be produced in animals by administering to them a pure concentrated culture of the germs, although it was only done with great difficulty after many experiments. He therefore held that germs were the cause of cholera. So, Robert Koch has explained the cause of cholera in 1883. Hahnemann explained or written the book about the cholera, its management, nearly about 100 years before. And he has explained that these are microorganisms which are not visible to human naked eye, but which remains in the confined spaces in the on the shipboard and which are responsible to affect the gut of the or intestine of the human being produces cholera. This has been mentioned by Hahnemann way back, and way after a long period, it was microscopically shown by Robert Koch. So it was because of his intuition and study, Hahnemann came to the same conclusion what modern science has accepted very late. And then Robert Koch got the honor about it that causes of cholera in the form of coma bacillus. But the things were already explained by Hahnemann way back. See what he says further. Other investigators, however, for time failed to duplicate his results and refused to accept Koch's conclusion. Pittenkofer of Munich, who did not believe that coma bacillus was the effective cause of cholera, to prove his contention, bravely swallowed the whole spoonful of cultivated germs. His assistant did the same, and none suffered any ill effect. So what the Pittenkofer he has done? He had consumed one spoonful of cholera bacillus without getting suffering from that. His assistant did the same and none suffered any ill effect. This somewhat spectacular demonstration did not impress others. However, many of whom realized that it must be necessary for human intestine to be in a favorable or susceptible condition, an unhealthy condition for the bacillus to thrive and multiply in it. So this experiment showed that bacilli is not the sole cause of the disease, which Robert Koch was saying. A little later, Metchnikoff of Paris repeated the Pittenkofer's experiment. He swallowed a cultivated mass of the bacilla on 3 successive days and had no injurious result. Others in his laboratory did the same with the result of only a slight intestinal disturbance. But of a dozen who thus put the matter to the proof in Pasteur Institute, one individual acquired an attack of Indian cholera, which very nearly caused his death. That put an end to such experiments and conclusively demonstrated that Koch's coma bacillus is really capable of producing true cholera when right conditions exist. And this has been written in italics. Right condition exists. And this is what Hahnemann have said way back. He said that unless there are secondary causes for the prima causa morbid to affect, prima causa morbid cannot do anything. And what are those secondary causes or secondary conditions? Number one is miasm background called as predisposition. Number two is patient's constitution. And number three is the environment of the patient. And if these are favorable, and susceptibility, if these are favorable, then and then only the prima causa morbid can produce the disease, without which it cannot produce the disease. And Hahnemann have explained all those things way back 100 years before. The announcement of Koch's discovery made the furor. Furor means tivra bhavna, excitement, furor in the medical world. Glowing hopes for cure were based upon it, soon, alas, be disappointed. It seemed such a simple proposition in those days: kill the germs and cure the disease. At last, the cholera was to be stamped out. It was very easy to kill the germs in a test tube, but to kill them in a living organism of the cholera patient without killing the patient was quite a different proposition. As they very soon learned, in spite of all attempts at cure based upon such crude reasoning, cholera continued its ravages with undiminished mortality. Now, hear what Hahnemann said more than 50 years before all this has happened. So, then, once it has been declared that cholera is caused by comma bacillus, then there was a people who were working to find it out the treatment of it, killing the germs, and they started killing the germs in a test tube. It was very simple to kill the germs in test tube because there nothing is there along other than the cholera bacillus over there. But inside the living human beings, when you try to do that experiment, it not only kills the cholera bacillus, but it was killing also that human being. And that's why it was dangerous. So what Hahnemann said was very important and regarding the causes of cholera. What he said, when Asiatic cholera invaded Europe in 1831 and began ravaging the population, it was realized that it was the utmost importance to learn its mode of propagation and extension. Upland, the great leader of medical thought in the Europe at that period, believed and taught that cholera was of atmospheric telluric origin, from which there could be no protection. So, what was the thought at that time? Cholera was because of atmospheric telluric experience. This was the thought. Against this awful error, Hahnemann protested in a vigorous essay on the mode of propagation of Asiatic cholera, in which he held that it was communicable by contagion only and propagated from one individual to another individual. Hahnemann denied that this is atmospheric origin. Hahnemann said this gets communicated from one person to another person. Illustrating and explaining its mode of origin and propagation, he says, on board ships, in those confined spaces filled with mouldy, watery vapors, the cholera miasm finds a valuable or favorable element for its multiplication and grows into an enormously increased brood of those excessively minute, invisible, living creatures, so inimical to human life, of which the contagious matter of cholera most probably consists. He refers again and again to the invisible cloud that hovers around those who have been in contact with the disk, composed of probably millions of these mathematic animated beings, which at first developed on the broad marshy banks of tepid gangs, always search out the human being. So Hahnemann explained that how this disease is produced, where these microorganisms remains to which Hahnemann labeled by name of cholera miasm. The word he has used instead of bacillus miasm. And he said that these remains in the moldy spaces, confined spaces of shipboard, and because of which the persons who remains to be there on ships used to be first people who succumbs to the cholera. And this has been transmitted from ship from Asia to the other European country. It was C 1831. And when Robert Koch have developed, he explained it is 1883. 50 years, 52 years, there was a difference. And Hahnemann was to the same conclusion of the cause of the disease. And that's why this is very important thing which has been explained by Hahnemann regarding the concept of disease. Consider this amazing statement in which Hahnemann again by more than half century anticipates the conclusion and demonstrates the modern science. Remember, Hahnemann had no microscope. That instrument, except in its crude form as a magnifying glass used as sort of plaything, did not exist. His conclusion was a deduction of pure reason from observed facts, which he stated at some length in his essay. Moreover, Hahnemann, by an exercise of that same thinking faculty which his wise old father had so carefully trained in his childhood and youth in the old home in Misen, also discovered and announced the true curative remedies of the for the disease, and before he had ever personally seen a case. So Hahnemann never had a microscope, but with his foresight, with his logic, our logical training done by father in his childhood, he was able to come to the same conclusion as Robert Koch have said 50 years later. This training was what his father used to do. His father used to keep him in a closed room where there is no outlet, and only he has to ask, just go on thinking. That's all. That was the training. Because of thinking process, the thought process, he has developed a logical thinking. This was a very good training done by his father on Hahnemann, and because of which he had developed inductive and deductive reasoning, a total understanding about how to reason and how to see regarding the things. And that foresight has been developed because of such a training. It was reserved for the Koch who had a microscope to demonstrate ocularly the absolute truth of Hahnemann's idea. Whether Koch had read the writings of Hahnemann on this subject is open to question. They were published in book form and were to be found on the shelves of any great library accessible to all students. Koch and Posture had read and were familiar with the teachings of Hahnemann. They were not so frank as one Behring, who publicly acknowledged his indebtedness to the Hahnemann for the idea of his diphtheritic antitoxin and declared that no other word than homeopathy would adequately explain its modus operandi. So Robert Koch and Pasteur, they were whether they have read the Hahnemann's writing or not, we don't know. They might have read it, but they were not open enough to explain that this they have read from Hahnemann. The Hahnemann's books were available to any big library, and there might be a chance that they have read what Hahnemann have said. But as one bearing was open to say that regarding the diphtheria, and he openly said that homeopathy, because of homeopathic and homeopathic writings and Hahnemann, he was able to come to the conclusion of diphtheria toxin, which the Pasteur and Robert Koch never said. So this is regarding the understanding of the disease or nature of disease, which Hahnemann have explained a way back, and this concept was there in homeopathy way before the modern science accepted new theory. So this is what we have learned today. We'll go ahead in tomorrow's session and we'll try to finish this chapter as early as possible. So that's all for today. We'll meet tomorrow. Today evening we don't have a chance to get a session again. So Mathematical sessions little bit difficulty in doing the Mathematical session, but definitely we'll do it after 3rd of next month. So thank you being there and good evening.
Thank you very much, sir.
Thank you, sir. Have a good evening.
Thank you.